Okay, so this is the third, and it will be like the last video on Forever How Long. I'm still really enjoying the album, and I think like if I was gonna make another video, which I won't because it's already three's probably too many, I would make a video just on like all the backing vocals on this album, which I think are really interesting. I tried to make this video once before, but I goofed up with like the angle of filming. I was traveling for work, and I goofed up the angle, so I didn't actually get it done, but. Anyway, so yeah, this video is about Tyler and her songwriting, and I find it really difficult actually to choose between like which song I wanted to talk about. I think first off, she's all over this album in terms of her influence. Happy Birthday is interesting to me because the beginning sounds a little bit like that Willy Wonka Cheer Up Charlie thing, the Cheer Up Child. I'll play both quickly.
Cheer up, Charlie, give me a smile. Cheer up, child, the world.
And it's also interesting because like it's empathetic towards the rich in the same way that Super Rich Kids is. And then you have Mary, which is interesting because it's like a song about bullying, which doesn't get written about a lot, which I'm surprised now that I like thought about it. But yeah, it's an interesting song, and it's cool because it's sort of a song about isolation or like feeling, left out of a group, but the backing vocals are insanely warm and like in very supportive of the singer, but the singer is like suffering in isolation, which is interesting, but I didn't choose that. Socks is interesting because it's about regret and memory, which I'll get into. And then Salem Sisters is just like an interesting song because the backing vocals, where on Mary, they're really supportive, are like antagonistic to what I think is the main character, like on a pyre being burned alive, which is interesting. But all that to say, like the songwriting that Tyler chooses to do and the way she sings is all really interesting. But I decided to go with Nancy Tries to Take the Night because I think it's probably the best song on the album. The more I've listened to it, I just really and truly believe that. So what is Nancy trying to take back? I think what Nancy's trying to take back is the night that she became pregnant, which is sort of like a very no take back situation. In general, it's sort of, you're faced with this really difficult choice. And I think the song is about regret and hope and sort of like the mind trying to rationalize and go through all the decisions that you could potentially make and then try to figure out which one will actually make you the happiest, and then coming to the conclusion that you just like don't know what will make you the happiest. You're like, you can't be sure what choice when faced with a hard decision like will actually make you the happiest is what I think the song's about. And in general, I feel like regret is something that, as a theme, Tyler touches on a few times in this album. The other example is at the end of Socks. She has that bit. I'll play it quickly.
There are so many chances steeped in regret. No matter which one you choose, baby, you're always gonna lose.
And yeah, it's just this idea that you can't actually know which moment is the right moment to choose. And it's a little bit paralyzing and it's a little bit sad, but it's also something you just have to like accept as a human. Just like a quick disclaimer, I'm not an expert on pregnancy by any means. I can't myself become pregnant. I do think this song is about pregnancy. I think it's like kind of obviously about pregnancy, and it's an interesting song. So I'd like to talk about it. But yeah, I'm by no means an expert. I have some other art that like considers like this question, like sort of the existential decision that comes along with pregnancy when it's unwanted, that I'll have below. But yeah, I'm by no means an expert, or like kind of obviously. And yeah, this song, before we actually get into it, reminds me of Basketball Shoes, because I think it was written around the time that Live at Busch Hall was coming about. And so it reminds me of Basketball Shoes in the way that they knew they had something good. And as a result of that, they were going to save it for the album. Like I saw them play some music live, I think at the Knockdown Center in 2023 with one of my friends. And they played Nancy Takes Back the Night along with like all the songs they played from Live at Busch Hall. And I don't think they had any other new ones. Maybe May also had a new one, but I can't remember it. But yeah, it reminds me of... Oh, actually, I think the saxophone... Lewis had a new song that he sang. that never, I don't think I've seen the light of day. But anyways, all this to say that Nancy Takes Back the Night just kind of reminds me of Basketball Shoes, because Basketball Shoes was a tune that they, I think, played live quite a bit, even while they recorded for the first time, and they saved it for Ants From Up There as like a song they knew was going to be good, and I think they built the entire album around it. So Nancy Takes Back the Night reminds me of Basketball Shoes in the way that they're really good as a band of knowing when they have something interesting and then sitting with it as opposed to like hurrying it out. Okay, but to get into the song, so we have, for the first 2 minutes, it's all instrumental, which happens sometimes on Black Country New Road songs, especially like Ants From Up There, but in this album, it doesn't happen a whole bunch. And so on Nancy Takes Back the Night, we get a full 2 minutes of just instrumentals. And so I consider this like the night, like the thing that Nancy is trying to take back. So for the first 58 seconds, you have like guitars sort of feeling each other out. And so I'll play that a little bit. So for the first 58 seconds, it's like the guitars feel each other out. And then you get like this brief resting moment that happens. And it feels more after this resting moment. Other instruments sort of come in, and it feels more like a joining of forces. So I'll play a little bit of that. And yeah, so I think the guitar and the instrumental intro like represents the night. So this is sets up, if you watch my Paul Simon video, it's sort of like this idea that music in general can introduce like what the themes of the songs are, or like aspects of the song. So in that Paul Simon tune, which is Duncan, it's like the thumping that signifies the couple in the next room. And then in Nancy Tries to Take Back the Night, I think the guitar and the intro instrumental bit is like all about the night itself. And so the guitar, particularly like the joining of forces, will come back later. So like put a pin in that, keep your eye on the ball, so to speak. And then with Nancy, who I think is the singer, we have 3 versions of Nancy. So we have the reflection Nancy, we have immediate Nancy, and we have non-Nancy. And so I think all of this is sung for the most part by immediate Nancy. And she is the one who takes the vote, the one like writing the note, which we'll get to later. And then Reflection Nancy is the first 2 verses, which we'll just start with that quickly. And non-Nancy is like a disembodied third-person narrator that comes in for like a brief little bit. So with Reflection Nancy, it's Nancy at her desk, right, or table or whatever, writing and reflecting back on the night. And so the important mantra that comes up quite a bit lyrically is the "Do you want it?" And so in this first verse, I think the "Do you want it?" So it's the time and the place it is now. Take that smile out of your face while you're dressed like a cow and you're frolicking around, legs in the air, smile on your face, but it's covered in hair. And so this reflecting Nancy seems to be like calling past Nancy, like night Nancy, a little bit stupid, like made a bad choice. And then the "Do you want it? Do you want it?" to me screams a little bit like, do you want that night to happen? Like, do you really want the night to happen? However fun it was, like whatever you enjoyed about it, do you really want that night? And yeah, so I think this is Nancy looking back at the night with regret. And then you get onto the second verse, and it's the "Do you want it?" takes on a new meaning. And I think in this case, and it becomes obvious with like the next lyrics that follow this verse, the "Do you want it?" is like the question of the baby in this case. So I think in the second verse, like Nancy becomes aware of the pregnancy, and this pregnancy is causing a specific anxiety. And then this anxiety is sort of like a hoping for, getting hit by a car. And like the weather is nice, but it's not enough to like lift your spirits. And then we get the mantra, "Do you want it? Do you want it?" Meaning the baby. And I think this verse is a reflection Nancy that's a little bit more sympathetic to herself, like feeling bad about the whole situation, which she should. It is an insanely difficult situation. Which brings us to this, "Mother, would you take me anon, anon, for I have nothing, no more baby." And so like Nancy just tells us, like the point of the song, I don't think, Nancy tells us like there's no more baby, right? The decision's already been made, at least. And so the point of the song isn't like the mystery of the baby. If you read "As I Lie Dying," like that's kind of a huge point of like the existential nature of the pregnancy and the character of Dewy Dell is like the mystery in the relationship, because her and Cash both know about it. And so like the mystery is kind of important there. But with Nancy takes the night back, or Nancy tries to take the night, it's more about like the emotions that Nancy's experiencing and less about like the baby itself. It's more about like Nancy going through all the options and, you know, following each line and whatever else, like experiencing the emotions of this with Nancy. And so, yeah, I think the setting is mostly Nancy at the table, and immediate Nancy is the writer and singer of the song for the most part. And then we get this instrumental break. So this is like right at the halfway point. If you remember, the guitars kind of join up in the beginning, and you can hear that joining up. Well, now we have like the drums almost interrupting the guitars, or it's like the drums like trying to break the guitars apart, but can't really break the guitars apart. I'll play it quickly. Okay, and then after the instrumental break is like where we get into what I think is sort of the flood of thoughts that come at Nancy while she's like casting her vote, so to speak, or like at the table writing. And so the first of which is sort of how her mother seems to think of it. So you have, I try to take the word, and what you said, I tried to take the word, but the word was dead. And so I think this is either like Nancy thinking about taking her mother's advice, which if you look at the last little bit of that, but how she wanted, it seems like maybe the mom would like Nancy to keep the baby. And Nancy like tries to consider the word, which the word could maybe be advice, or maybe the mom's religious and the word represents like capital W word, but I think it's more advice, right? And so Nancy considers this, you know, while she's casting her vote. And we experience this as a listener with Nancy, like the casting of the vote and trying to take her mother's advice, which she doesn't end up doing. And then we get another reflection on the night. And then again, Nancy's asking her past self, oh, do you want it? Oh, do you want it? And the pace picks up here, which I think follows like the frenzy of thoughts that Nancy's experiencing. And then you get the just imagine a life with a baby and wife, what the times could look like when compared to the knife. This is like a little bit optimistic, like Nancy almost considering like, oh, maybe this could work. And like this would be much better than the knife, which could maybe represent an operation. If you've read The Hills Like White Elephants, you understand what the operation represents. Or knife, maybe in some way Nancy considering like a harm unto herself. But then it turns into a realism, and Nancy realizes the money's not there. You sit in despair, you curse at the sky, say it's not fair. And then it's, do you want it? Please tell me, do you want it? Like I think Nancy asking herself. And then we get the answer, right? Like Nancy asks this of herself. Oh, please tell me, do you want it? And then we get the answer, and we get non-Nancy. So I'll play that really quickly. Actually, we won't play that quickly. So the do you want it? Oh, please tell me, do you want it? Then quickly transitions into the rapture of the autumn eve led to a fate no one believed, which I think is just non-Nancy, or the third person narrator telling us exactly what happened. So I'll play that actually quickly. So you see it spill into it.
Still imagine a life, there's a baby and a wife, with the times of the night when compared to the night when the line is not there, so you sit in despair, curse at the sky with the cry, it's not fair. Do you want it? No, please tell me, do you want it? Now you kiss the rapture of the autumn eve, led to a fate no one believed, taken to the table where she wrote, she held herself a vote between a good and bad, with all she'd seen and all she'd had. Nancy tried to take the night, but now she's gone, removed from sight.
All right, so then non-Nancy kind of lays out that Nancy took a vote, made his choice. And personally, I like to think, and I think this is right, that Nancy decides to just sort of like run away, it seems, like from whatever life she had. And then you get this little blue bit, which is, and mother, would you take me? And on. And if I could take it back now, would I take it back now? Which feels a little bit like walking along compared to how frenzied the rest of the thinking was leading up to the vote. And so it feels to me as Nancy has left that behind, you know, made her choice. And you get this last line, which is, Nancy took the night, she's gone anon. And to me, that Nancy took the night means like Nancy accepted the night, she's gone. I don't think there's a baby. I think the baby's gone. And Nancy is also gone from whatever life it was. Yeah, it's a cool song. This whole album is so cool. I'll be done making videos on it, I think, at least for a while. I really appreciate them. still making music, and I hope everyone has a nice day. Peace.